a culture here that we know very little about the Middle East. And so my wife and I traveled to the Middle East and traveled all around by car through Saudi Arabia, met the people, met all kinds of wonderful, wonderful places, went into people's homes and got introduced and became friends with many, many people, including Hamza Jamjoom, who is the star of our show. He's here. He's now 26 years old.
I am, yeah.
Yep. And when we filmed the movie, he was 22 and 23, and we traveled the country with Hamza making this movie. He's a film student from Saudi Arabia, visiting the U.S. and taking film classes at DePaul University near Chicago. And so we made this movie over 7 various filming events. I've been in Saudi Arabia for 9 total months, and have gotten to know the entire country and many of its people. And I really have a great deal of respect for it and the advancements that they're trying to do today to basically come into the 21st century. Now, what we're showing you today is a 3D movie, and so I'd like those who are sitting on the edges, the very best seats are right in the center of the theater. That's where the illumination is the brightest, and you get the best three-dimensional feeling. So if you don't mind, try to move more towards the center. Also, I'd love to introduce you to the gentleman that did the music for this film and did the music for Everest, the show that Joe Demetrius was just mentioning, the highest grossing documentary of all time. And he's done all of our IMAX films over the past about 30 years, Steve Wood. And he wants to tell you a little bit about the culture and the way music is used in Arabia. Come on up, Steve.
Oftentimes Greg gives me these jobs to take on, and he never fails to come up with frightening things that I have to do. The music of Saudi Arabia is very much different from what I'm used to, but I've had enough experience with music and different kind of cultures to realize that I can't jump to conclusions about anything. Just a little history. When European missionaries went to Africa and saw a bunch of relatively naked people sitting around playing on drums, they couldn't conceive of the fact that they would have a highly evolved musical ability. They saw low technology and thought, oh, these guys can't have anything going for them. They didn't recognize how sophisticated the rhythms were. And, years later, of course, those rhythms have infused the music of the world, and certainly American music would be nothing without it. So, in the same way, there's something about Arabic music that's very foreign to us. So part of my job was, in trying to bridge this cultural gap, was to come up with something that is like in a meal, where you try to combine elements and make something that's familiar enough to everybody so they recognize it, but not so foreign that it puts you off. So, of course, since I don't have much experience, I had to look around and try to find people to help me with this. It was more familiar to them, and I was lucky to find Nasser Musa, who's sitting here and entertained you a little bit before we started. One of the elements, of course, the rhythmic element is a bit different, but more than anything, the tuning element is very different. In the West, for many years, up until the 1600s, we used a kind of tuning that followed the physical overtone scale. And it's kind of peculiar in that if you play in the key of C, you can't also play in the key of E if you're tuned to C. So all the music in those days had to be in a certain key, and all the orchestra players, like all the brass guys, had tons of plumbing. If they had to change keys, they had to rebuild their instrument, basically. So Bach and his crew came up with a mathematical way of compromising all these tunings and finding what was called the just tuning or tempered tuning. So now here in the West, we've had 500 or 600 years of this kind of tuning, and we're used to this. And there's keys, and there's no cracks, and almost everything we play has a fret on it or something like that. In Arabic music, they have very, very expressive little nuanced tunings that to our ear tends to sound just out of tune. And what it turns out is they have really literally hundreds of scales of micro-tuning that are very defined. And, you know, for me, they all sound out of tune. I mean, even after all these years of working on this, I can kind of recognize one or two of them. But anyway, so the gist of it was Nasser and I got together and we tried to come up with something that sort of could bridge this gap. And I think the most fascinating thing for me is that I got together with a lot of people from different cultures, and the beauty of this project for me was we actually accomplished, I think, what the goal of this film is, which is we look to each other's culture for something to inspire us. And, you know, it wasn't like, well, I know everything and you don't know anything. It's more like, what can you show me that I don't know that I can integrate into what I do know? So we're going to start off now and just play little pieces of some of the music that's in the film. And we really had 3 minutes to rehearse. And every musician always has to apologize before they start playing. So, just to make it really raucous, we're going to have Hamza come up, who is the star of the movie, my wife Beth, who is really the best one up here. And so here we go. This is where all of our spiritual praying comes into play. No matter what the religion is, we're praying.
الله عليك الكل مفتون بعينيك الله